Welcome to the Josh Bolton Show, where we dive into interesting and inspiring conversations. And now, your host, Josh Bolton.
All right, let me just make sure I got everything set here. Yeah, all right, cool, man. Can you hear me all right?
It comes through fantastic, especially with that mic.
Yeah, I love this microphone. It works out great for this type of stuff.
Yeah, I would say the Shure and the Hail. I forgot what its name is, but those two are like fantastic mics.
Yeah, I for a while used a Shure SM58, and that actually, if you take a little time to EQ it, you can make it sound almost identical to an SM7B here for about a quarter of the price.
But it takes a lot of EQing and settings.
It does, yeah. It takes some messing around. I have an audio background, so this was the easy part of podcasting for me.
So do you have your own show then?
I do. I have a show called marketingandservice.com, and it's basically all marketing and service and kind of the intersection of marketing and service and how small businesses can really leverage that opportunity to compete.
Interesting. Okay. I'm saying not many. I've talked to many marketing like podcasters, not from that angle though.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so my background has been I've worked for the same company for about 20 years, and we're in the music space. We do music education, music sales, audio equipment sales, and I found during my career the best customers have been the ones that I've developed long-term relationships with, and in doing that. I've realized a lot of it is just empathy and serving the customers. And, so many companies, they say, hey, customer service is such a big deal to us. But, we know that most companies don't really provide great customer service, right?
They don't.
You're lucky to get a hold of somebody, lucky to, if you can get someone to answer the phone. And if you get that, chances of someone calling you back with a solution to your problem is pretty low.
It gets really low after that. Maybe that person answering is willing to work, and then they send you to whoever. I'm still waiting on someone to call me back from a company, and I'm like, they're not going to send anything.
Right. Yeah. So it's that's kind of the world we live in. But I do think that is the place where especially small businesses can really dig in and leverage that competitive advantage.
So I'm just curious. I've talked to a lot of business people, but they didn't say it the way you did. Is the empathy and compassion to the customer? Mm-hmm. Is that just literally just sitting and could be, for an example, sitting and just listening to their problems?
Yeah, I mean, I should preface that with I think the first rule there is authenticity, because you can't be empathetic and be inauthentic. And what I mean by that is if you don't really care about what you're doing and you don't care about the customer and you don't care about the product, there's no way you can really care about their needs or care about the problem they're having. And it'll always come through. And even if you do fix their problem from a technical perspective or procedural, you're not going to build that long-term relationship, and it's just not going to pass the smell test if you're not really authentic and passionate about what you're doing.
That's interesting, because the way you said it that way reminded me. I used to teach martial arts. I don't anymore. It was one of those, Josh, it's time to get a real job, and I had a very lucrative side thing going, but that was it was one of those. So I grew up not fully Down syndrome, but not fully mainstream normal people. I was that weird middle group. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up with a lot of Down syndrome and autistic, but functioning, but not most of my life. So when I went to go teach martial arts, it was one of those weird things I've kind of realized I was targeting them, not to be creepy, because I knew how to talk to them and how to understand them. And it's one of those, actually my instructor, I go to see him in a couple of days. He even told me last week, he's like, I made more money off you dealing with those customers because you were just so kind. You understood where they were, that they were paying thousands of dollars to get your time. I'm like, and you only paid me barely $50 for the week.
Yeah. So we come from a very similar background because I started with teaching music, and I assume very much like in martial arts, when you have this direct interaction with people you're working with face to face, and you see them on a weekly basis, and you see them grow, and you see them progress, and you see them achieve these goals they had set out for, it just naturally creates a human connection, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the foundation of how do you take that experience where, you're really proud of their success, when they're succeeding, and you feel good about it when they're happy and they're enjoying the process. And how do you take that at such a personal level, this one-to-one, teacher-student type thing, and how do you apply that to, let's say, Verizon Wireless, or a cable company? If you're dealing with cable or a cell phone, like they're always like the worst offenders, right? Trying to get
really
help
are.
And that's kind of my whole purpose and mission with my podcast, is to kind of really think about that for a minute. And I know it's a lot harder than it sounds, when you're talking about a call center with 150,000 operators in it versus, maybe you and one other person in a dojo somewhere, in a local community that you live in, right?
Right.
But I do think it's those small businesses that can create those relationships every step of the way, whether it's martial arts, or maybe you're a plumber or a contractor or an auto mechanic, or all these local fields that businesses usually get involved with. They all have that opportunity to really leverage that type of relationship for long-term success.
Oh, 100%. And actually, that's one of those I guess I had on Friday. He was explaining all the different stuff, but I told him the same spiel. Like, this is a service that's kind of hard to transition into business. As I've been talking to great entrepreneurs and business people, I've come to realize it's not necessarily I have to implement it. I have to make sure my employees are comfortable and happy at my workplace. Therefore, they give the customer a wonderful and happy time too.
Right.
And I'm like, and there's a weird disconnect where, for some reason, upper management, whether they've been C-suite too long or they just have forgotten that it's people, they're dealing their business, and people have emotions. Yep.
And how do you keep those people engaged and interested? And again, I'll go to the big side, to a Verizon or an AT&T. You've got 700 different divisions. You've got 30,000 agents. How do you keep them engaged and passionate about resetting cable modems? Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
The main one I was telling him, and I said I'm an observant person. I was keeping tabs, and I said, my story is the one. Do you know the logistic company NFI? Just curious, Justin.
I don't.
Okay. Well, a big company. It's just as big or even bigger than JB Hunt.
Okay.
But they're private, so I don't think they're ever going to go public either. But this warehouse, they just recently bought 50 warehouses when I was working for them, and they were buying like another 50 on top of that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, they're big. And it was just one of those, the guy came with this old dude. If you looked at him, you would assume he's dirt poor, like same as us kind of thing.
Right.
Man's making $50K a month. And he just said, "Hey, Josh, you're observant. This is my baby that helped me get to where I'm at. Why is my baby dying?" kind of thing. I said, "Well, that one guy that came in, he had a Hell's Gate tattoo, fire and demon spawn coming out." He's like, "Oh yeah, Chuck." I'm like, "Sure, that guy." Well, Chuck just wished to break his leg so he can go home for 6 months instead of working here for one day.
Wow.
I said, so the word morale has way more power than what's happening here.
Yeah. And I think we see that everywhere in a lot of places, right? There's a lot of businesses. There's the great resignation with people quitting left and right and moving different companies, and really valuing that work-life balance, and valuing an environment that's going to foster their career and their growth. And it's definitely something that companies have to take a look at now.
And that's pretty much what I told him indirectly before. I said this back in like 2018 to him, before it was even a huge problem. But I told him, I said, you don't have to understand their pain. Know that they're human and they understand they're coming to work. They're trading their time for your money. But we humans, whether we're competitive or not, love games. Yeah. We love games. Don't know why. We just do. I said, so make it a contest. Can you afford saving $500 of your own dollars, not the company's, at first, and just give it to them? I said, $100, sadly for W2, is game changing.
Right. Can
you give them $100 to Albertsons or Walmart, whatever you insert, whatever here? You make it just as simple. First player gets $200, and the rest all get like 100, and then the last one gets 50 because you got to even it out and all that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I can do that, no problem." Within a month and a half, he went from, for math's sake, 2,000 packages an hour to 8,000 packages an hour.
Oh, that's significant.
Yeah.
That's really significant.
And that's what I told him. I'm like, you totally forgot what it's like to be a manager where you're rooting for your team. You're doing everything to make sure they're happy and getting stuff done. And then you could take the company card, go buy that expensive taco down the street you've wanted to try, but never had a good reason to. Now you get to use their money and give it to the crew.
Right.
I said, if they hit a big goal, I said, I don't know how you work out with the company. You can figure that part out. Give them like a paid day off, or they could just cash it in an extra hour, a day's pay without working it. I said, again, game changing, sad to say, for a W-2 worker.
Yeah. There's different perspectives too on that, right? I mean, certain employees want different things. Someone might be interested in more money or opportunities to make more money. Someone else might be interested with flexibility in their hours. Somebody else might be interested in, having a lunch party, or, birthday celebration or something like that. So yeah, it's really kind of tuning in and trying to figure out what those things are and see how you can get to a point where you can make them happen.
And a lot of them wanted it. And it was, again, I was just saying offhanded, like, this is what I would expect if I was working for you. I said, but you never say thank you to any of them. It's the simplest thing, and it means the world to them.
Yeah. Gratitude.
And that's where then that shift that I worked, that warehouse, went from the laughing stock of the company to everyone calling, going, what the hell did you just do?
Right. There you go. Yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes is little changes and it kind of no different than dealing with a customer, right? A little empathy, appreciation, gratitude, authenticity. Those kind of words resonate at every level.
100%. Like, there's this one coffee shop, actually, probably gonna go pick him up tomorrow. He knows me. We talk about his shop because I'm good about business, and especially with coffee prices going up. I'm like, man, you're gonna have to keep just spiking your prices like Starbucks. He's like, I don't want to, but I have to.
Yeah. It's tough. Well, it's really tough today with the inflation and
oh my gosh,
availability, inventory availability. It's been a really difficult and challenging time that I think a lot of companies probably never thought that would be a problem they would have to face. You always think about, am I going to get enough customers? You don't usually think, am I actually going to be able to get the core product that I sell? Am I going to actually be able to get inventory that people want? That's not something that I think I've seen in my lifetime to this extent.
Oh, same. I have a group of people I'm going to talk to tonight around 4 p.m. And some of them lived through the 70s, and they're saying like it's almost identical. What's happening in the 70s is happening today.
Right. Just to be clear, I didn't live through the 70s.
Me neither. I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up on the original Power Rangers, and
I got you beat by almost a decade, but not quite the 70s.
You got that parachute genes. But yeah, so I'm just loving this. Can we tell me a little more about the customer empathy experience and more nuances of that?
Right. So you use the word experience, and that's another one of those things you hear a lot of big companies are hiring now, right? Like chief experience officer, head of customer experience. There's a customer experience department. The problem with those is that no matter how passionate that person is, you really have to have buy-in from the entire organization, especially at the top levels of management, because your job in creating a good customer experience is really looking at the entire customer journey, right? How are they coming into the business? How are they working through the business? What's the sales process? What's the post-sale support process? What's the life cycle like? Do they finish this product and go back to the beginning? And you look at all these things and you say, how do I make every single step as easy and as frictionless and as enjoyable as you possibly can for a customer? The problem is if you suggest something and then someone else says, no, we're not going to do that. We can't afford to do that. And service is a big one, right? Because most executives and a lot of business owners, they look at service as a expense and not as an income or revenue generating element of the business, right? You've got your sales team driving revenue. You've got a marketing team that's driving inbound leads to the sales team generating revenue. And then you've got this thing called service, which is after you've already gotten the money. And now this is just a big expense. But what I found is that, especially in a small business, there are so many amazing opportunities on the service end to get that little extra, right? And to give that little extra to solve a problem, and potentially upgrade a service, upgrade a product, maybe sell a complementary product. There's a lot of opportunity for sales on the service side, because at the end of the day, the salespeople, more or less by necessity, they're usually not going to go back too often to the old people they've already sold something to just to say hi. They should, but they're usually right. But they're driven by commissions usually, or they're driven for new sales. So they do their thing and then they want to move on and find the next customer. So the service team is the one that does interact regularly with the customer after the sale. So it's important that you have a service team that, one, knows the product and is knowledgeable in the product and is interested and has some type of passion and commitment to the product, but also have some level of, I don't know if I want to say sales training, because the goal of the service call is not to end with a sale, but the opportunity in the service call can potentially lead to additional sales in the future, right? If it's a positive outcome, whatever it is, then that person's going to go back to the beginning of their journey and maybe they buy a new product or a new service that you offer. And you want to just be able to really focus on that end of it, on the tail end of the journey, is where I think there's more potential for competitiveness in today's business landscape than there is that, right? Everyone's fighting for top of funnel. You know, again, if you're a plumber, if you're a contractor, if you're a teacher, right? If you're all these things, everyone is fighting for that top of funnel, and everyone's fighting for that customer acquisition. And I think a lot of people, it's easy to get so caught up into that you forget to foster the relationships you already have.
Yes, no, that's very true. Like when I was teaching martial arts, that was my whole thing is, I actually didn't really actively go out and market. It was all word of mouth for me. And I was just, I fostered a relationship and they grew, they had a great experience. And then it was just one of those, they went ranting and raving to their friends, like, oh, you need to go to this kid, Josh, at this martial arts studio. He usually is sitting in his office eating a Subway sandwich. Don't mind that kind of thing. And and it's just got to the point I had to tell them, like, I'm like booked full now. Like you might have to pay more for me to move someone around, and they would still pay it.
Yeah. So that's, you take that and you amplify it. Right. And now imagine it wasn't word of mouth. You actually had a sales team, and your only job of the sales team was to drive leads to you that are, well, at this point, you are the product. So your sales team is selling you, right? And you're taking in these customers, and then you're not following up with any of them. You teach the class, but instead of fostering them one-on-one like you do in real life, now you have a service team that's going to monitor their success, right? You might have a customer success manager. That's a term you hear a lot today. You have onboarding. They're going to be the ones who kind of set the customer up for you, right? And then you have the support team that's going to follow through and make sure that that whole process has been smooth for the customer. And if they have any issues, they're going to go to them. But who actually goes back and makes sure the results were positive, right? Like as a teacher, one-on-one, you're always monitoring and you're always looking for results. You want your student to be successful. But as organizations grow, I think it's easier and easier as those roles get narrower and narrower in definition of what they do. There's really nobody looking out at the end, you know, like who at Verizon Wireless is looking out for me and making sure that I'm really enjoying my cellular service, and that it's a trouble-free experience, and that the reception is crystal clear, and that my range is good, and that my equipment is efficient, right? No, there's really nobody who does that. You kind of move along this journey, and even retention, I hate to say it nowadays. I'd switched to AT&T from Verizon, and they made zero effort to retain me whatsoever. I was a 20-year customer. Not even one person said, hey, you know, is there anything we can do? You know, why are you dissatisfied? It was just like, all right, no problem. Thanks. Have a nice day. And that to me is a very bizarre attitude for big companies to have. But again, I'm not there. I don't know how that scales, and I don't claim to be the expert in enterprise service.
I would say, at least on that caliber, both of us are not that good.
Yeah. But at the small and medium-sized business, when you look at big companies and you think, wow, how am I going to compete? right? How am I going to compete with this big corporation? How am I going to compete with this big national company? And the bottom line, you're going to compete because you're going to provide a better experience. You're going to provide more fostering, and you're going to provide better support and service, and a better environment, and just a more authentic and genuine care that they are achieving the positive outcome that they need to be successful.
Oh yeah. And then that's actually one of those, the coffee shop guy. He was already doing it, but it was just like I was a regular, so he just knew me by whatever. And that's one of those I asked him, I said, "Hey, do you train your employees specifically to remember people who, if they've like show up 3 times a week, remember their name, their general order, get it started in advance?" And he's like, "No, I haven't." I kind of suggest the whole remembering the name. I'm like, that right there, I said, it's the main reason why I come. I know if you see me, you're already pouring that coffee, capping it. By the time I'm at the counter, all I got to do is pay and go.
Right. Right. And it builds loyalty.
Mm-hmm. And I said, I know you do it correctly. I said, a few of you, because he hires a lot of college kids. I said, a few of the college girls, they have picked up from you your habits being around you so long. But I'm like, if your whole team was like that, I said, oh my gosh, I'd be yelling at everyone to go to you. It's like, screw Starbucks, go to this guy.
Right. Yeah. And I think a really important thing to look at there is that when you're in that type of environment, again, it's even if it was a Dunkin' Donuts, a huge franchise, but it's still, usually the same people working there every day. Mm-hmm. And you see these people, you have that one-to-one, and now they remember you, they remember your name. I am a huge proponent, especially if I'm doing any consulting with small businesses, to CRM systems. And I don't care which one. There's so many of them today. They're all pretty good.
I want to say, what's the one do you usually recommend people though?
I have a lot of experience with HubSpot, and okay. That's one that I've used quite a bit. I used Infusionsoft. I wasn't a huge fan of that. I like the email automation, but the CRM itself wasn't that great. But what I really think people need to do is take the time to take notes and actually use the CRM for what it's really for, right? So like I could sit down here and I could say, okay, I talked to Josh today. Josh taught martial arts. I can just put little notes, right? And then if we connect 2 years from now, say, hey, Josh, how's the teaching going with the martial arts? How's the trucking job you had? Or, how did that second warehouse come out? And now you're creating this authenticity because you took notes and you took the time to care and write it down, because you're not going to remember these things 6 months later, a year later.
No, but when they message you in the CRM system, you're like, yes, okay, hang on.
Yeah. And think about, what's the difference between a company that a year after you buy something, they email you and say, hey, we hope you enjoyed your product. By the way, we have these 10 things on sale. Or the company that says, hey, Josh, you bought this, Model 12XY thing about a year ago, and at the time you bought it, it was because you were struggling with this, and this from what I recall. I just wanted to let you know, I hope that's worked out, and I hope you've had those positive results. But hey, you might be interested in this. Check this out. This is a new product we have that kind of goes along with those other issues you were having a year ago that we hopefully solved your problem for, right? Now, obviously, it's a vague, but like that's an example of if you have that CRM and you have that customer information in front of you, as a salesperson, it allows you to provide a much higher level of service and personalization. And again, in a very small business, you might only have a couple hundred clients and you will remember all these things. You see them every month, or you see them every quarter, or maybe you see them once a year, but you know them, they're your neighbors, they're your community. But as you grow, you have to think about, how do I scale up? And, and scale works at every level, right? You might, how do you scale from 1 customer to 100 customers? How do you scale from 100 to 1,000? How do you scale from 1,000 to 10,000? Right. And of course, those processes will change over time. But things like HubSpot, it's completely free, which is why I'm an advocate of it for the core services. There's no reason any business shouldn't be running something like that. And again, it doesn't have to be HubSpot. There's tons of CRMs out there. I just use that one as an example because I've used it and it's free. And that's the type of thing where like, all right, that's one thing you can do today. Right now is you can go create a HubSpot account, dump your email into it, and start creating your contact list. And just put a few little notes every time you hang up the phone, or anytime you end a visit with a client or a customer. You can just put a little note in the system. It can be any. Oh, a customer had a golden retriever in the store today. Cute little dog, named Alf, right? And these are things that you can use later on. That person comes back, oh, hey, how's the dog doing? Or, how's that project going that you were, I know last month you were working on building a wall at your house. How did that finish up? Did that all go well? And it really helps create that flow of conversation that's a much more humane and authentic conversation than the robotic follow-ups that we're so used to.
Yeah. It's sad to say. So to tie in real quick earlier, the reason I asked you what your CRM you recommend people is I had a business coach and he was advocating for Kartra. Do you know that one?
That one I don't know offhand. No.
Okay. Honestly, it's a bitchin' system. They do automate everything. It's plug and play. It was great. It was like $100 a month. But the only problem for me is I couldn't link my email, my website domain to the Kartra account.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a really small thing. I did their video exactly how they explain it. And because I'm using the same system they're using, I know they can see my attempts and everything I've emailed them. Finally, I just told them, like, hey, it's been literally a month. All you've just given me to run around the copy and paste. Like, can I just get my money back at this point? Because what's the point of running my CRM if I can't even put my link on it?
Right.
And one guy, new guy, he even said, like, I'm new. I had to read through your whole profile. And he's like, yeah, they totally gave you the runaround, the copy and paste. And he's like, we're all about the thoroughness and follow up. And I told him, I'm like, dude, I said, you have been more helpful than everyone else. They're all like, your fault, figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of one of those scenarios where you have multiple people at a company. There usually is someone who cares. It's unfortunately not always the person you're going to be dealing with. So, how do you distill that down to the entire staff? Or more importantly, how do you have a track in which the customer can get to the person they need to get to relatively quickly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I told him. I said, is there a way I could, because it was Google domains, I input an email and then one of the devs just go in and flip all the switches they needed flipped. And he's like, no, the devs are very particular. And I'm like, well, yeah, they're the ones getting the $150K a year. They're God in their world.
Right. So, yeah. That's another big thing I'm a proponent of is everyone really having responsibility and taking responsibility throughout an organization. Nothing is more annoying than calling a company and them blaming a different department. And I've
seriously.
told, yeah, I've told the story a few times on my own podcast about a situation where a service tech came to my home to fix a washing machine and said, "Oh, I don't know, this thing's a piece of junk, and I don't know who the hell fixed it last time. They were an idiot, blah blah blah." And I said, "It was you. You fixed it last time, like 6 months ago." But
funny.
that attitude though is that's something where companies do have to take time to train service teams and say, hey, listen, you don't want to badmouth other parts of the company. Even if you're going to fix the problem, it didn't make me feel better. Even if the guy fixed everything, he left. I mean, I didn't feel better about the brand. I didn't feel better about the washing machine. I didn't feel better about the experience. I just felt worse about it all. Now I felt guilty that I really wasted my money and made the wrong decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say it was some book I was reading where it says essentially you could have a wonderful experience, but the last end of the experience, if it's terrible, the whole thing's terrible then.
You're exactly right. Yep, you're exactly. And that's kind of what I said at the beginning, right? Like everyone spends so much time at the front end of the journey. And then as customers make their way through the journey and they get towards the tail end of the journey is when companies really usually take the nosedive and stop paying attention. And you're exactly right. People remember the last thing that happened, not the first thing.
And that's where, like, I had a lady on and she makes journals for Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, hey, this is cool. We're talking. But I told her, I said, because I bought her product and I was also just chatting with her. I said, the reason I really liked you and wanted to help you out is you personally followed up, or you have a really good copy, because it felt like you were actually like following up with me. And it felt like you genuinely cared and were curious and all that. I said, everyone else is just like the generic, here's your receipt, here's your tracking number, get the hell out.
Yeah. It's a, and that's what I like it. How much does it cost? Let's put it in dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
How much does it cost for someone to care?
Not much.
Nothing. Nothing. It really
Maybe
costs
under
nothing.
$1.
Yeah, yeah, very, very little. You just gave that example of a company that didn't really care, but they don't have to spend $1 million to make someone care. They just need to make a few tiny little adjustments in how they either handle the customer data, adding those little notes, maybe a little empathy training, and taking the time to just listen for a minute. And now all of a sudden you have an ordinary experience turn into extraordinary experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. This one company I use, I do trading on the side, and I always joke with the guy calling in. His name's Joe. Mike, I just say, hey, it's Joe. It's one of those. He gets thousands of calls a month, so he's like, oh yeah, I can hear it as he's pulling up the screen. Josh.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those. We're talking, and I'm notorious for using the software it's intended, but still breaking it somehow.
Yep.
I don't know what it is, and I'm trying to figure out how to capitalize on it. And it was one of those. I said, hey, did the sales guy Travis in the back end write the note of that I actually broke the system? And he's like, he starts flipping through. He's like, oh my God, he did. He's like, and a developer wrote on that too. They never do. I said, let me guess, is a couple explicit words because I genuinely broke the software. And he's like, in developer terms, yes, they cussed you out. Yeah. I'm like, of course they did. But it was just one of those. He's like, wow. He's like, I didn't even one of those. I didn't even think of scrolling back in your notes.
Right.
I was just one of those. I told him, I said, yeah. I sort of told him, hey, if your CEO ever wants to send something out, send it to me. I'll break it for free. Right.
And that's another example of, sometimes people say, oh, that's cheating. Like you're just cheating or fake empathy at that point. It's like, well, no, because if you actually took the time to listen and you took the time to put some notes in of what you heard and what you listened to, it means that you took the time to care. Mm-hmm. And then you took the time to read the notes when the customer calls again or before you call a customer. Obviously, if someone calls you on the spot, it's not so easy to read 3 years worth of notes. But in a lot of instances, if you're following up, if you're looking for a repeat sale, a lot of times people don't take time to read the notes there either. You might have some ongoing crisis, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call from a salesperson. Hey, hope all is well. I want to sell you this new thing. It's like, whoa, wait, I'm in the middle of I'm about to sue your company because the last thing you sold me was so bad. So those are the little things that I think can really make a big difference for a lot of small businesses.
Yeah. So then let's just talk the mom and pop coffee shop. Well, they don't necessarily have a CRM in front of them. How would you recommend them to approach a similar tactic?
Well, the first thing is the training, right? So in retail, I know a lot of places you kind of just get thrown in there. There's a really high turnover rate in retail in general. So you see a lot of employees that will be there for maybe months at a time. Very rarely do you see them stay years and years and years because either they're going to move up and they're going to move out of that position, or they're going to move on to something else in their life. So retail is really difficult in training because there's always such a high turnover rate. Mm-hmm. And I had experience working at quite a few retailers when I was a kid, and one that actually seemed to put the biggest emphasis on service was Sears. Obviously, in the long run, it didn't work out for them. We don't see Sears anymore. Pretty sure they fell to bankruptcy. But Sears had a really good training program, and as a 18-year-old kid, it taught me a lot of the fundamentals of service. And one of the pillars of that I live to this day is employee empowerment. Nothing is more obnoxious than when you're at a store and there's a price tag that's not right. There's a line of people behind you, and now this person's trying to page a manager, and now you're standing there for 15 minutes with a bunch of angry people. Everyone's upset. Productivity is screeched to a halt because this person wasn't empowered to make a decision. And Sears had an opposite approach and said, listen, we don't want to stop traffic. You know how much it costs to shut down a lane on Black Friday at a major retail store? Just do whatever you got to do. Take a guess. If the customer's happy, just move the line. If they're returning something and they're a day outside of a return window or 2 weeks outside of the return window, no, you don't have to get a manager for approval. Just go ahead and approve it. And that was something that stuck with me my whole career. And I believe in that now very, very strongly, because I feel like it's something that I haven't seen. I thought it was something that would get adopted by a lot of companies, but how often it's like, well, I have to get a manager's approval. How many times do you hear that? I have to get the manager's approval. And
Yeah.
it's really a waste of everyone's time. I think you can really set guidelines as to what a retail employee at the, very bottom of the rung, like what are they allowed to do? Give them a budget. Right? Give them a little more responsibility and say, hey, we'll give you a budget for refunds or extended returns. And we're going to call it a marketing budget, because by you doing this, you're creating the tail end of that experience and you're making it incredible. And we know that that's going to result in a long-term loyal relationship. Like you said, when they remember your name, they remember your order, you're not going to want to go to a different coffee shop now. You've built this relationship. Right? You're married. You're literally married to this coffee shop now, right? You don't want to start all over again. That's really, really difficult and scary. And what if the new place isn't as good? What if they don't remember your name? What if they screw it up? There's so many things that you're going to be worried about. And we don't want anxiety in life. We want everything to be easy. Mm-hmm. And what you described is easy. I walk in and they say, hey, Justin, here's your coffee. You're all set. $3. Hey, that's easy. I'll pay a premium for easy.
Right?
No stress, no anxiety.
I do. And sometimes I actually, I get cash and I just throw them a tip. I'm like, I tried to give it to them, but they put it in a jar. I'm like, shh, there's no cameras. Just take it.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
But, it's honestly, and that's like what I told him. I said, I honestly am now, I don't like going to Starbucks unless, like there's only one I can kind of trust that I can get the order right. Mm-hmm. I said, but I know with you, even if you are not there, your crew is trained correctly they may not know me, but they can get the drink correct every time.
Right. Yeah. And of course that, again, watering things down on a podcast is a little different than real life. As a product gets more complicated, and the variety of products becomes greater, and the size of the organization, the number of customers that come through the doors, all those things grow, those challenges become a little more difficult. A great example in my business was there was a national store that wanted to get into music sales. And they were going to sell all sorts of instruments. They wanted to be like a full-blown music store, and build this department into the rest of their corporation.
I'm just curious, what was that place?
I don't know if I want to say the name. It's
rhymes with. We can skip it then. Never mind.
Yeah, they looked like your shirt.
Oh, okay.
A blue company that sells a lot of electronics.
Okay.
And their big pitch was, we're having all the manufacturers come in and they're going to train the staff. Every manufacturer of every major instrument company is going to go there. They're going to train the staff at all these stores, and they're going to be so smart and so incredible. And it's going to blow the doors off the whole music industry. I remember reading this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, that would be nice. I mean, everyone would love that, right? If you had a personal rep from every manufacturer to come in and just train every day. But I thought to myself, what happens in 6 months when there's not one single person left that went through that training from the original training? Are they going to just keep coming back every month? Well, nonetheless, I don't think most people ever saw musical instruments in any of those stores.
Or if it was really minimalistic, like an electric guitar and an amp, and that's it.
Yeah, and it was for a very, very short time. And if you look in the corner of the store that you've never been in, you might even see some remnants of that era, which was probably, I'm thinking 10 plus years ago. But I still see some random stuff that they just don't know what to do with. No one's going to buy it. They didn't want to throw it away, and they haven't liquidated it. But every now and then I see one of these kooky things on a shelf, and I just think to myself, that's been there for 10 years, and nobody's addressed it.
Yeah, I would say the Best Buy near me. I would say, since I figured it out.
Oh, I'm not. I didn't say that. I don't know who it was.
Oh, God. No, never mind. It was Walmart. But yeah, randomly I just ran for the electric guitar because they had this whole big area for fridges and all that. But me and my buddy knew if we wanted like the good amps and speakers, you had to go to the wannabe music area. And a less fancy version of yours in the back was just like this $50 one they're trying to sell for $200 electric guitar. And I'm like, I'm not a musician. I know this is a piece of shit.
Yeah. You've got that issue, and you've got, there's instruments, and I'm not just saying this because I'm biased because I'm in the music business, but they're fairly complicated things, right? They're not just you don't just take them out of the box and turn them on, right? A guitar, you've got 6 strings, they break easy, so you got to replace strings. You've got to tune the guitar. There's lots of little knobs. There's the wire that connects the guitar to the amp. There's the cable that connects the amp to the wall. There's all these little things that make up that process, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong, right? Cables break all the time, and every guitar player has a bunch of cables because no matter how much you spend on cables, eventually they're going to break. These aren't like stuff behind your computer you plug in once and never touch again. Most people are plugging in and unplugging these guitars 3, 4, 5 times a day, 10 times a night if they're a professional gigging musician, and they wear out and they break. And where are you going to go when you go back to a store like that? And you think someone there is going to know how to tune your guitar or help you put a string on it? Not a chance. It'll never happen.
No. And honestly, like during college, I was trying to learn the old school acoustic guitars.
Yep.
And I found my old guitar I bought back in high school. I just went on impulse buying and bought one. So I was like, oh, finally I can learn this thing. Well, like you said, I was just playing it, not anything aggressive. And the 6th string broke. And it was just during the lesson. So the teacher just pretty much lent me his, and I took it to some place, and then I actually had to like call up the teacher and be like, so where am I supposed to go to get this replaced? Because I don't know how to do this.
Right.
And it's where he's like, go over to like Guards Music or some other shop and they'll fix it for you. He's like, hell, Guitar Center, but he's like, that's a hit or a miss.
Right. Yeah. And that's an example. That's a giant corporation. They've got stores all over the place. And that's really tough. They fall victim to that, a passion, product knowledge, I don't think it's unique to the music world. If you're buying something expensive, certainly $500, $1,000, maybe it's a computer. Are you going to have a better experience buying let's say, a Mac at a store like a Best Buy? Or do you think you'll have a better experience at an Apple store if there's one next door?
If it's next door to Apple store.
Yeah, generally, most people are going to realize that the Apple Store is going to be a much better experience because they're going to invest more in product training, and it's a much more limited number of products, right? If you work at Best Buy, you should have some basic knowledge of all the computer systems that they sell, right? If you work at an Apple Store, you only need to know one, right? As long as you know the basics of a MacBook and an iMac, you're good to go. You got like 90% of your job down. So that's one of those examples of again, like, investing the time in the service, investing the time in the product knowledge and the training, you're going to have a better outcome. No matter what business no matter what product or service you're selling, you're going to have a better outcome. And you should want to be the Apple Store, not the Best Buy, right? And, great. If you want to go buy a DVD, there's usually not a lot of questions. There's not a lot of product knowledge. It would be interesting if someone really enjoys movies, right? When I grew up, if you worked at, if you were really into movies, you'd go get a job at Blockbuster because you were surrounded by movies all day long. It was fun, right? So naturally, your passion kind of aligns with where you work normally, right? Especially today, every retailer on the planet is looking for staff. So if you're into electronics, it would be very, very odd for you to take a job at Bed Bath & Beyond if you could get a job at Best Buy.
And I would say that was the one thing for me. At least my Best Buy here in my city, the one guy that is the go-to, all of them just say, you go talk to whoever, is usually the overweight guy that's the gamer, loves his tech though.
You're exactly right.
And you have to get through the arrogance of a geeky gamer and you get the best knowledge. Cause like I was buying a laptop and the skinny guy came over. It was just like, okay, let me check in. And I'm like, I'm buying like $1,000, $2,000 laptop. I want like the best for my money. And he's like, you want to talk to Justin for whatever sake. And he's like, I don't know anything about these laptops, but he could tell you exactly the pros and cons. He comes over, had his Cheeto stamps and everything. I'm like, yeah, I got the guy now.
Yeah. And the best part of that story is everyone in the world right now that has ever been into a Best Buy is shaking their head up and down saying, yeah, I know that guy. I know exactly who you're talking about. Every Best Buy has that guy. Right.
And it's funny. It's like he was in the back on doing his thing. He wasn't even out in the field. And he just is like, hey, get Justin customer in the front.
Yeah.
You hear him get like groan and come over. And that's where I explained to him, like, I'm needing a laptop for this, and this. And he's like, okay, you don't want that one. You want this one for what you're doing. And I was like, It was an extra $500 over budget, but I'm like, screw it. It's the best I can get. I'll take it. I'll just get some extra credit.
Yeah. And that's an important lesson too, is knowing who in the organization. I kind of alluded to that before, making sure there's a path for the customer to get to the people they need to get to. And, you know, I don't know what Best Buy training is like, but I would imagine if I were doing it, I would say, hey, you know, this guy here, we'll call him Bill. Bill is the resident gamer. He's an expert at this. He knows everything about gaming machines. Don't be afraid to tell someone, hey, for this, you should really talk to Bill. And then maybe you got someone who loves music and they're passionate about, hey, you know, you're looking for a new album or something or a new movie. This is the movie guy. This guy loves movies.
You want to talk to Amber kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something that I think companies don't always take the time to do. There's not always a path. It's just luck of the draw, right? Like you said, you call a company. Sometimes you get someone who can help. Sometimes you don't. But it's okay to not have the answer. If someone calls me and says, hey, I got this situation with you know, X, Y, and Z, and I don't mind saying, I'm not going to try to make this up or lie to you. I don't know. Let me get you someone who does know immediately. I'm not going to waste your time asking you questions about something I know nothing about that you probably don't know anything about. Let me get the person who can do this for you. And that's important. Having that pathway and that ability, because I know in a lot of companies, especially in the customer service realm, you know, not resolving a ticket within a time frame or not resolving a customer complaint in the first phone call are negatives, right? So, but yet you're not enabling that person to pass you on to the person who can actually help. So you end up with someone who's wasting time, and then they're basically being encouraged to lie or end the call at any circumstance so they can get their, you know, their rating, however. Clear ticket, close it, and be done and move on to the next one.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like every time I usually call this one company, it's not the trading one, but I don't even call the right extension. I just say, hey, Jimmy, I know you're not the guy for this question, but can you transfer me to whatever department, whoever knows this better, kind of thing? Yeah. And he's all like, oh yeah, no problem. Hang on. He's like, let me shoot him an IM so make sure he's not in a meeting. And then I wait like 2 minutes tops. He's like, all right, he's free. Here you go. And just sends me off.
Right. And hey, listen, worst case scenario, they say, hey, listen, he's out today, but I'll send him. He'll call you first thing tomorrow morning.
Oh yeah.
If he called you and he gave you the answer, you're still going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the thing. People aren't, I don't think most people are unreasonable, right? Every now and then you get someone who's unreasonable, but most people are reasonable. They just want to know that you care and that you're being truthful, right? If you say, hey, he'll call you first thing tomorrow and you don't hear anything for a week and you call 10 more times and you still don't hear back, that's a really negative experience. That's not going to make you happy. But if someone's very upfront and says, hey, listen, this guy's on vacation for a week, I can try to help you with this, or if you want, you know, I'll send him a message and I'll make sure he calls you as soon as he comes back from vacation. Now, depending on the urgency of your issue, you might say, no problem. You know, it's not an emergency, but I know he knows my application and what I'm doing with it. It's worth it for me to just wait because I know if I talk to him, it'll be fixed in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It sounds like common sense when we talk like this as two people. But it's not. You know it, and everyone knows it who's listening, that they've all dealt with customer support, and it's not common sense.
Yeah, my running joke, but it's kind of more of a truth than anything else. It's common sense is not as common as it used to be.
Right. Yeah. It's
but
too much knowledge isn't necessarily a good thing.
It's not. And like your analogy of the whole, I'll put you on a list. So my podcast hosts, their whole thing is within 24 hours they'll get, if you shoot them an email, they'll reply to you, kind of thing. And they've been very accurate. There was one time they got DDoS attacked. Like someone was trying to just shut their whole servers down. And I was just saying like, hey, I can't see my podcast on my like website. What's going on? And it was so bad. Literally the CEO with his own email in the company says, hi, I'm whatever. I'm the CEO of the company. I am now in the trenches with my crew. I'm sorry to say yours is not an emergency. I will put this at the top of the list once we get over this attack and you will be answered. He's like, and it was just one of those I replied, Tim, I don't know anything about podcasting, but the fact that you're in the trenches with your crew, can I work for you?
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Who's the podcast host? You know,
Buzzsprout.
Oh yeah. I use Buzzsprout too. Yep.
Yeah. They're awesome. Job. And that's where I tell people, I'm like, you're paying a premium, but you're more paying for the back end.
Right.
Because it's honestly, if you have any question, even if it's dumb, like, why is the sky blue? Don't be like, why are you asking this? But it's blue.
Yep. They do a good job with their content as well. They seem like a solid company.
So I'm curious, how long do I got you for?
I probably got to wrap it up in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Perfect. Then this has been actually awesome, Justin. I definitely have clarified a lot of things, at least for me. I got 3 questions for you.
Okay.
I don't know why I held up 4 fingers though. The first one, other than work, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy during these COVID times?
Interestingly, the one thing I've been doing the most keeping me busy is learning how to play this bass that's behind me on the wall. That I took home the day I'm in New York, and I took that home the day that New York shut down. I'd ordered it a month earlier, not ordering it as a result of COVID, but just because I want to learn bass. And then it actually showed up the day we shut down in New York. So I got to take it home and and I learned the bass. And I started a podcast that's now gone on over a year now and over 50 episodes. So it's that was a lot of fun and a learning process in and of itself. And those are kind of my 2 main hobbies.
That's awesome. Okay, side question. Do you prefer bass or guitar?
Well, can't really see the guitar, but I do have a guitar behind me as well. And I
can see the amps for it.
Yeah. So I am not that talented when it comes to bass or guitar, and not to belittle bass, but it's a little bit easier than guitar. So I've been trending more towards bass lately, but I am trying to learn guitar as well. I'm a drummer by trade, so.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. So let's say someone aspiring to be like you, successful man, great jobs, playing bass. What are some tips, tricks, or advice you'd give them to start down a similar path?
I think the one of the most important things is finding something you have some passion in. If you're passionate about something, you're naturally going to be inspired to learn more about it. And I say this, I look at the beginning of my career, I say I worked a lot of retail. I worked at Sears. I'm not really much of I don't build a lot of things like out of wood or like physical things. Sears was a tough job for me. People would come in and ask about tools and drills and sanders. And, I wasn't into it. And I really wasn't inspired to learn much about it, which made me not really that great at that job. Whereas I worked at GNC, the health food store. That was just a job I took because it was a job. But it turned out I was actually genuinely curious and interested in supplements and vitamins. And within a month of working there, I was reading every book I could find on it. I was reading magazines, periodicals, whatever I could find and learn more about. Again, this is at 18, 19 years old. And I learned that doing that made me much, much, much better at my job, because now when someone came in, I could recommend things, I could cross-sell things, I could upsell things, and I could do it with passion and enthusiasm and with knowledge. Right. And I remember they said, I don't know if they still do it. They used to have this Gold Card Tuesday, and we would get a commission for that. And I remember thinking like this was always the best day of the month. Like I could make so much money on that one day working retail. It was amazing. So generally speaking, learn and become an expert at whatever it is you want to do. Because I think more than a college degree, more than certifications, having a passion and a knowledge will just naturally kind of elevate you in whatever it is you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the main one I tell people too, is if you're passionate about it, as long as there's a means to make money, then figure it out. If there's obviously certain things you can't make money off it, keep it a great hobby. Maybe you could somehow tie it in, but just keep the passion and just know when business gets involved, it gets a little bit grindy, but it's worth it.
Yeah. I beat up on car salesmen the most because in most instances, they don't know the cars they're selling. And I think to myself, most manufacturers, with the exception of a few, Toyota probably has 30 models. But if you work at a BMW dealership or you work at an Acura, especially one of the higher end companies that don't really have a massive product line, you should really know those cars inside and out every year. You should know what the differences are between the 2020, the 2021, and the 2022. You should know what's coming out in 2023. And it never happens. I mean, if you have any interest in a car, you'll probably find you always know a lot more about it than the guy who's trying to sell it to you. And that's kind of, in my experience, the epitome of lazy salesmanship. And certainly an area for the same reason as the Walmarts, right? Because dealers have a lot of really high turnover rate. Most people don't, go and say, I want to sell cars as a career. They do it as a temporary bridge to something else, and they don't take it too seriously while they're there. But there are people who've had really nice and profitable and well-paid careers in that industry that do take the time to learn and stick with the company for 10, 15, 20 years. And that would be my advice, is just never stop learning and become an expert at whatever it is you're doing. Even if it's something you don't think is that exciting, if you make yourself an expert in it, you will naturally end up being, you'll be the guy at Best Buy who comes out when someone needs to buy a gaming machine, right?
You'll be the one with the Cheeto stain, and we're like, we have the right one now.
The question is how does Best Buy reward that person?
They don't.
They don't. Yeah, I don't think they do. And that's the sad part. And if there's a lesson to be learned by anyone listening who runs a larger organization, you got to find that person, and you got to make sure you keep that person and pay them more, because that is worth so much more than having to train a new employee who doesn't care, who's never going to have the knowledge, and is going to create a negative outcome for your customer.
Oh, yeah. No, and that's when I tell people too. It's like, back to the Best Buy guy. If you have someone, he may not be good at sales itself, but the one or two he does, he just locked in way more than you can ever price in.
Right.
So, where can everyone get you at?
So my website is marketingandservice.com. The podcast is marketingandservice.com with yours truly, Justin Varuzzo. Yours truly isn't in the title, but it's Justin, V as in Victor, Aruzzo. So that's anywhere podcasts are. And you can always check out the website, marketingandservice.com, which also links to the podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Then I'm probably going to be sending you an automated email within the next 4 minutes. So anything else, all that will be linked in the description too.
Perfect, man. I appreciate that.
It's
been a pleasure talking to you, Josh, and I hope you have success with your podcast, and I hope I've been able to offer a little bit of value today.
Oh, 100%. It's been awesome. Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're an awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations, you're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome, and see you next time.